Alright, so this is a video. That's true, this is a video. Alright, so this video that I am recording or you're going to be watching is actually something that I started writing about 3 years ago now. Originally, I started reading and researching this case in 2023, and I just never recorded this. I think life just kind of got in the way and I got focused on other things and I just never got around to actually recording this. And so I went back, edited a little bit, make it a bit more concise and more, I would say, enjoyable for somebody to watch. So hopefully this will be the new format for me making videos on this channel, and I hope that you guys will enjoy this. So this is about the disappearance and subsequent murder of Thora Afton Chamberlain. Of course, if you see me looking away, this is me reading what I wrote down, basically my script. So of course I can't look directly into the camera. Actually, I'm still looking at my screen here. I personally don't like to look straight into a camera because I find it to be uncanny. But once again, this is going to be me reading my own script. So hopefully some people won't be too offended that I'm not looking directly at them. Thora Afton Chamberlain, or maybe Chamberlain, I'm not sure how exactly to pronounce her last name, went missing on November 2nd, 1945 from Campbell, California. At the time of her disappearance, she was 14 years old. Now, her profile, she has a profile on NamUs and various other missing persons websites, but I will preface right now in saying that this is the reason why she is listed as a missing person is because her body has never been found. Now, on various missing persons websites, she is listed as having been 5'2", 120 to 125 pounds, white with brown hair and blue eyes. Her NamUs profile states that she was last seen getting into a stranger's vehicle outside of her high school in Campbell and had not been seen since. She was last known wearing a Garabarand, this is just a various brand, Garabarand coat, a red skirt, blue sweater, 2 pairs of socks, which was one red and another blue, with tan loafers or loafers, just another word for that type of easy type of shoe from the 1940s. There had been, at least when I first originally researched this in December of 2023, there had been 12 exclusions to her case, so 12 Jane Does that were genetically tested to familiar DNA that were excluded, and then only 3 of these exclusions were actually from California. Thora's NamUs profile was first created actually on January 26, 2017. So, according to the Charlie Project, Thora was born on November 22, 1930. She was last seen carrying textbooks, a zippered binder, and a cowbell. On November 2nd, 1945, Thora had just finished her classes and planned to attend a football game after school, which explains the cowbell and her pretty much festive, if you want to call it, outfit. These were basically like the school colors, the rooting colors, which is why she had the different pair colored socks. Her classmates saw her speaking for several minutes to a man in a vehicle that was on Winchester Boulevard. One of the witnesses said that the man was dressed like an ex-serviceman and wanted someone to babysit his sister's children for the afternoon. Thora got into the vehicle with him and was never heard from again. According to the Doe Network, Thora also had a red knit bag. Classmates witnessed Thora talking to the stranger, and they stated that he had stopped at the curb and lowered his window. One of the classmates had stated that Thora had tried to call the classmate over to the curb, and this was because the man wanted someone to, of course, take care of his sister's children for what was supposed to be like a half hour. The classmate denied the stranger's request and just kept on walking to the football field. Thora stated that she would be along shortly, she would be coming back, and she told the classmate to save her a seat. A few minutes later, another classmate stated that she saw Thora enter the car and drove away with the stranger. And of course, according to these classmates, she never returned, and of course, they never found her. So as the story goes from various sources such as multiple newspaper articles I had found, it was stated that a little after 3 p.m. that day, November 2nd, 1945, a man driving a blue Plymouth pulled up. He was wearing slate gray navy trousers and a navy-style white t-shirt with a purple heart and blue insignia on it that said Londonderry, Ireland. Ella Boudreau from Saratoga caught sight of a speeding car that almost ran her down as she went to get her mail at 3:30 p.m. Inside, there seemed to be a girl who was clawing at the back window with a terrified expression on her face. Authorities believed that this was Thora. Within 2 weeks, the FBI were investigating the case, dispatching one of their top experts for the time, E.J. Connolly. He was sent to San Jose, California, and he acted on a hunch from the San Mateo police chief, who was named Robert E. O'Brien. The FBI ended up focusing on Thomas Henry McMonigal, who was an ex-convict from Illinois that they believed stole the naval clothing seen in Campbell. The girls that were with Thora that day were able to identify his picture. McMonigal, who was 31 at the time, was married and had actually done 9 years in Illinois prisons for attempted rape. In May of 1945, he was booked into the San Mateo County Jail for the alleged assault on a 14-year-old San Bruno girl. Her family declined to prosecute, saying that they didn't want public attention. Keep in mind, this was the 1940s, and back then the mentality that many people had was sometimes in victim-blaming territory, I'll put it that way. But the FBI quietly started to follow McMonigal, where he actually ended up going back to Illinois to see his father, and then took a bus back to San Francisco. On December 6, 1945, McMonigal arrived groggy, almost semi-conscious, having ingested a large dose of sleeping tablets, which was something according to investigators. McMonigal was taken to the hospital for treatment, where a doctor certified him as mentally clear before being released. The FBI coaxed him in trying to reconstruct the events of November 2nd. In a statement that he ended up signing for FBI officials, McMonigal said that he had taken Thora to Santa Cruz via Highway 17, then drove up Highway 1 to a point close to the San Mateo County line. I just want to preface that these highway names are different today in 2026 as they were back in the 1940s. So keep in mind this is what they were called back in 1945. But anyway, McMonigal said that Thora was shot by a .32 caliber Colt revolver in his car. He was quoted as having said, "If I shot her, that is where it took place." He told the FBI this, actually. And he went on to tell investigators that he then continued driving north on Highway 1 to a place called Devil's Slide, where he dumped Thora's body down the cliff. Various sources have stated that this was at least 300 feet. McMonigal had worked at a construction yard that was over on the peninsula, and the FBI actually ended up finding a pair of slate gray trousers and several items that were buried, which of course actually belonged to Thora, which included her brown shoes, school books, and the cowbell. The .32 caliber revolver was also recovered, along with bloody pieces of upholstery. So at this point, when he was really pretty much found out, the evidence was found, McMonigal decided to change his story. He claimed that he choked the girl to death, and then he said he stabbed her. Another time he said that he buried her in a drainage ditch near the construction yard that he worked at in Burlingame. McMonigal had been married twice, and at this point in time, he had an infant daughter with his second spouse that was named Ina. Upon his arrest for the crime against Thora, Ina filed for divorce. The FBI never found Thora's body, but they had more than enough information and evidence to take him to court. At the trial, Joanne Conkle, who was 11 at the time, testified that McMonigal attempted to lure her into his car with a babysitting offer just a month prior to Thora's disappearance. He told Joanne that he would pay her $10 to watch his little girl because he had a sick sister in San Francisco. Joanne refused, and McMonigal drove off, then circled back and asked again before driving in the direction of San Francisco. Various sources and articles I found established the fact that this was a repeat occurrence for McMonigal, where he would drive up to young girls and try to lure them into his car. So the case against them was called People versus McMonigal, and it's actually posted on the ScoCal website, where anyone can read a summary of the court case. McMonigal is listed as the appellant, and his counsel, his lawyer, was Charles Bagby, that was actually appointed by the state Supreme Court. So within this summary, it stated that McMonigal was indicted and charged with the murder of Thora. He entered the dual plea of not guilty and not guilty by reason of insanity. The jury returned the verdict of guilty, and he was found guilty of murder in the first degree. A trial was held on the issue of McMonigal's sanity because, of course, he was trying to use the insanity plea. And, of course, the jury resolved against him. They found him to be mentally competent. Of course, he was given the death penalty for the murder of Thora. Even though he tried to argue for a reversal, this was thankfully not granted, and he was sent to San Quentin State Prison. In 1947, a man named Robert E. Cornish became fascinated with the idea that he could revive victims of heart attacks by apparently injecting adrenaline into their bodies and seesawing them on a teeter board. McMonigal had heard of this theory and offered his body for experimentation after he was executed, but the warden of San Quentin and actually California law enforcement refused this. So, of course, in San Quentin, McMonigal was sent to death, and he was put in a gas chamber on February 20th, 1948. As the guards strapped a stethoscope to his chest, he apparently made the joke, "Don't strap it too tight." Through the glass of the gas chamber, apparently 100 people watched him die. McMonigal's burial details are unknown, though there is a Find a Grave page for him. McMonigal's execution is actually also listed in the California list of executed prisoners, which is actually very interesting considering the fact that California virtually doesn't execute anyone anymore. So, of course, Thora's body was never found. And so that is why she's still listed on websites such as NamUs, and even still so in 2026. But because of the terrain of where her body was dumped at, from what McMonigal told people, the currents over at Devil's Slide are just, and have always been, too turbulent for anyone to completely search for her body. There were search efforts in the past after, she went missing and they found McMonigal, but because of the just rough waters, it was just never possible to completely look or actually be able to find her. So what do you think? Personally, in my opinion, I do believe that Thora's body has probably been lost to time and lost at sea. But I think that, there might be 1% of hope, right? Perhaps one day some sort of DNA evidence will come back and maybe it'll turn out one day that Thora's body turned up somewhere.